I spent so long choosing you, and now you're scolding me. That's exactly what a little child said to his mom when she scolded him for breaking a toy. And this is someone's real story. A story from the comments. Let's look at real-life cases that viewers of our channel shared in the comments under the episode, Do Your Children Remember Past Lives? Believe me, while watching this episode, you'll probably get goosebumps more than once. After all, there's no point in making up some fictional story about your own children and your own fate just for fun. Especially in today's fast-paced life, when the flood of information just doesn't leave us any time to reflect on something or remember something important. So, for everyone who shared these paranormal experiences from the heart, there's clearly no reason for them to lie. And if after watching you feel like sharing your own unusual experience, we would be glad. As usual, the most unique cases are at the end of the episode. So, let's get started.
My daughter, when she learned to speak, said, "Dad, I waited for you for so long and so eagerly."
I saw my daughter in a dream before she was born. We talked. She turned out exactly as I saw her. I remembered her face from the dream. My wife wasn't even pregnant yet. I knew the exact day and month my daughter would be born.
Many children talk about how they used to be big. It's just that adults don't listen or believe them. I didn't have memories like that, but when I was a child, my little sister used to say things like that, and it made me curious.
She told it all so coherently when she was 4 years old, and it was always the same story. When she was a grown-up lady, she had a husband and 2 children.
Then she argued with her husband. They fought, and she ran away into the forest. There, she climbed a tree, was reborn, and became little. We laughed. We asked her, "How were you reborn?" She said, "It was winter and I was only wearing a dress. I got cold and fell asleep. That's how I was born to our mom." Of course, everyone thought it was just fantasies. No one really paid attention. I didn't really listen to my son either until he started talking about the maternity ward. That's when I really started to think about it. He couldn't have known such details. I never told anyone. For example, that the midwife was singing while delivering the baby. And he even said the words to the song she was humming.
A singing midwife, you couldn't just make that up. I kept quiet about it until my son told everyone.
And here's my story. I don't remember how old I was, but I was very little. I remembered a fire and a girl with straight red hair. I've remembered that all my life. But as I grew up, I thought I had just seen something like that in a movie or something similar. And then, when I was already 22, I started a new job and saw her. You won't believe it, but it really felt like I was struck by lightning. It was her, the one from my past memories. A year later, we started dating and living together. The episode of our meeting was fading from memory, but at some point, I started having a dream. She was on a pyre, she was silent and looking at me. Inside, my heart was breaking, but outwardly, I didn't show it. One day I asked her if she remembered anything like a past life. And she replied by asking if it was the one where I burned her, and she added that she's been dreaming about it since childhood. When I tried to find out more, she exploded and said she didn't want to talk about it. Afterwards, I recalled moments from before the conversation. For example, my hair got tangled. I wear it long. I got a bit irritated while trying to brush it. She came over, helped me, and said that I never knew how to take care of my hair before. And in general, she often compared things to something from some kind of before. Even though she was smart and definitely in her right mind, there was always something strange about her. As if she was burdened by something only she knew. And it's not just my observation. After a little over a year, we broke up. And we really broke up. It was a hard breakup. But every time something not so good happened to her, I could feel it. I would call our mutual friend and ask if something had happened. And I was never wrong. After that, she often started appearing in my dreams. In the dream, she would just come, hug me, and I would say something like, "It won't work out between us again." And the next day, I would find out from our mutual acquaintance that my ex had been crying on someone's shoulder, saying she wished we could get back together, but she knew it would only get worse. Now, I've been married for a long time, and I love my wife very much, but I still feel some distant connection with that person.
A little off topic. When I was in first grade, a boy from the 10th grade was telling us that in the future, people would be able to change their gender,
that we would read from a small television in our hands, and that this television would have a lot of books, and that everyone would have one. This was in 1967, 53 years ago.
I readily believe in all of this. I can sense the dead. and graves too, whether they're empty or whether their owners are present. I talk to the portraits at cemeteries. My whole life scares me. I've learned to overcome my fears, even the fear of going to the cemetery at night. And I even graduated from medical school. But just the thought of entering the morgue made me turn pale and sometimes even faint.
But one day, while walking down the empty and dark long corridor of the anatomy building as a first-year student, I caught a glimpse out of the corner of my eye through a slightly open door of a specimen in the form of a corpse.
Soaked in formalin and ready to be dissected. With my heart pounding wildly, I entered the room, closed the door behind me, determined to put an end to my fear once and for all, which would have made it impossible for me to continue my studies. The corpse under the white sheet seemed alive to me. I pulled the sheet back from his face and was so terrified I almost stopped breathing. The face was that of a respectable old man, about 60 or 65. He looked as if he were just sleeping. And I asked him for permission to study him, as my program requires. I don't remember his exact words, but he answered calmly, completely at ease. Something like, "Son, don't worry, do your job, I give you permission." Well, what can you do if you chose this profession? After that, I nodded, covered his face with the sheet again, and quietly left, closing the door behind me. I had conquered my fear of corpses.
The initiation was complete. 30 years have passed, but I can't forget that episode. Time. I can't say that I became fearless, but I learned to control my fear, and the dead, they're all different.
Some look like empty spacesuits, which is probably not a bad thing, because I think their souls have left and gone to their own worlds. But others, mostly the younger ones, look like they're just asleep, and some talk calmly, while others scream and complain, terrified by what happened to them. Sometimes I can even sense someone who will soon die. Not always. One day I visited my former boss with a bottle, had a conversation, but as I looked at him, I saw that he was like on autopilot, and he himself was no longer there, only the body remained. And his gestures were unnatural, as if he were a puppet. On my way out, I stopped by his deputy's office and advised him to keep an eye on the boss, since his health didn't seem too good. But I got a firm response that everything was fine. About 6 months later, I called him to wish him a happy birthday, and his son answered, saying that his father had died the night before at the hospital from a stomach hemorrhage.
To continue, I don't know about others, but I was shocked when my son, at 3 years old, described in detail how he was born, down to exactly what the doctor said, word for word. Then he told me how we were discharged from the maternity hospital, what color the car was, that it broke down on the way, and that he got scared. What was he thinking about back then?
And at the same time, he said that before, he was a big, fat, bald man. He had a wife and 3 children. He drove a huge truck, he said, and carried important cargo.
He was driving, and suddenly he felt pain in his chest. Then there was a very bright light, and that was it. He became small. He was lying on the table and looking at me, and he understood that I was his mom. And later he said that he remembers that when he died and went up, he and his sister were looking at us from above and arguing about who would be born first. She wanted to go first, and he let her. He said he got tired of waiting for his turn to be born. He was watching us. He told me about many moments, even about the time before he was born, things we ourselves barely remembered. He even described exactly how the furniture was arranged back then, and what everyone was wearing. There is a 7-year age difference between him and his sister. He is 11 years old now, and he doesn't remember any of this anymore. But we remember his stories very well, because it was creepy to listen to, even though it was interesting. He spoke about everything very clearly and vividly, as if he really was there with us. We just couldn't see him. And he also said that he spoke another language when he was an adult.
And he really did start speaking English at first. I only noticed it because I studied English at school and remember it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have paid attention to his childish babbling.
And by the age of 3, he was only speaking Russian. And when he told me all this, I started to think that maybe it wasn't a coincidence that he sometimes used English words and sometimes even sentences. I never believed in things like this. And now I don't know what to think. No one would believe me if I told them.
Continuation. I'm already 56 years old. I remember the moment of my birth and the realization that I would have to live here. It was frightening. I wanted to go back, but at the same time I understood that it would never happen.
I understood it as a big prison that you can't escape from, and the only way out is to live your life here in order to go back home. As a child, I often had a dream where I was plunging in a truck into an abyss, and at the moment of hitting the ground, I would always wake up crying and scared. In 1980, I came to the truck depot to see my uncle. He worked as a mechanic. In one of the garages, the guys had taken the engine out of a truck. I told them what needed to be done with it. Take off the cylinder head, send the crankshaft and the block for machining. Basically, everything for the repair. They listened to me attentively and asked how I knew all that. I answered that I had done it many times. They asked, "When did you do it then?" And that's when it hit me. I'm in 8th grade. How am I supposed to explain when I did it? I turned around and left. To their credit, they didn't laugh. Later, I analyzed how memories from a past life come up not when you plan it or want it to, but suddenly. That's just how life goes.
My brother was killed when I was 8 years old. He was stabbed in the temple. He knew he was going to die. Before that, he destroyed all his notes and diaries and said it was time to start a new life.
Many years passed, I got married, but I didn't have any children. One old woman said that my brother's grave was too active, and as soon as we removed the photo from the tombstone, I would have a son. That's exactly what happened. I had a son.
A copy. He's an exact copy of my brother, and now he's all grown up. The white lock of hair remained, and he calls his grandmother Mom and calls me Sveta, even though I'm his mother. It's a paradox.
Once, my son and I were looking at photos of city landmarks. He was 3.5 years old. He started talking early, at 1 year and 8 months. When he saw a photo of Moscow with the Kremlin, he clearly told my wife and me that we had forgotten him in that city on a trolley bus. And then he rode with the conductor along the route for a long time, hoping that we would come get him. After that, he was handed over to a police officer. He doesn't remember anything after that. My wife and I laughed. We said that he probably dreamed it, that he had never been to Moscow. After all, we live in the Urals, but he kept insisting on his story. So I asked him to describe the trolley bus and the people. He described the trolley bus as being shaped like a loaf of bread. The conductor was in a long, dark coat, wrapped in a shawl, and a policeman in a greatcoat with a wide white shoulder belt and funny pants, like Cheburashka's ears, tucked into high boots. I realized those were breeches. By all descriptions, it resembled the 1950s, early 1960s. He told this story to us, our friends, and then kept repeating it until he was about 5. Now he is 16. When I ask him, "Do you remember this story?" my son answers that he doesn't anymore, but deep down, he is still afraid that his parents might leave him.
I remember that on my 5th birthday, I was lying on the couch, waiting for my parents to come home from work, staring at the ceiling and thinking, well, 5 years have already been wasted.
On what? On nonsense.
I asked my 5-year-old son, "What is a soul?" It's the world of my inner essence.
I also had something in my story that I can't explain. My dad died 25 years ago. There's a photo on the wall where my daddy and my little brother are squatting down and looking at the grass.
It's such a bright photo, black and white, but you can still see how the sunlight is tangled in my dad's and my little brother's curls. I had a little son, and when he was about 3 years old, he stood in front of that photo, frozen, and said, "Mom." That's me. We were looking at a grasshopper, but then the little one got scared and started crying. So I comforted him and began rocking him in my arms. I said, "Wait, who are you in this photo?" He said, "This adult right here." And he pointed at my dad. I was so shocked because I was actually there in that distant past, standing right next to them. But I didn't make it into the photo. And my dad really did pick up my little brother back then when he started crying, scared of the grasshopper, and began rocking him in his arms. Now my son is 12 years old and he still insists that it was him.
Before this video, I thought I was the only one like this, but it turns out I'm not. I hope I don't need to explain what a birthmark is on a person. If we're not being scientific, it's considered a mark left by a violent death. So, I have a distinctive diamond-shaped mark on my neck. I'm 30 now, but when I was about 12, the name Alexei kept going through my head, even though my name is Valentin. At the age of 17, I started noticing that I was looking for the surname Sentsov in books, and by the time I was 27, I went to St. Petersburg for work and had a chance to visit a museum. I saw an exhibit there. I remember it clearly. It was a death tag from Tsarist Russia. Just a regular capsule with a piece of paper inside at the bottom, with the name Sentsov Alexei written on it. And at 28, I was able to find out that I died defending Port Arthur in November 1904. I was killed by a bayonet strike to the base of the neck.
And in my past life, I lived in Moscow, in the old Arbat area. I used to even remember the address. My name was Rita.
I only had my mother. It was somewhere in the 50s or 60s back then. I lived a wild lifestyle. I was completely different, blonde and busty.
I remember how my mother suffered. She begged me when I was 19. Rita, let's go home. I remember how I threw a fit and left with some guy.
I remember her thin and exhausted face. I remember how I used to swear. I even remember the terrible hangover. Then I met a criminal, and he bought a country house where we lived. It was actually pretty good. The last thing I remember, I'm walking to the country house, turning through the alleys. It's golden autumn outside, and I'm all dressed up like a fashionable city girl. Suddenly, I hear a gunshot, sharp pain in my chest.
It was so clear and painful. The big sky suddenly started spinning and became so small.
When I turned 2 years old, I begged my parents to take me to the city with the red road and the tower with the star. Dad asked how I knew about that city. We didn't have a television back then. I said that I lived there when I was Rita, and that another mother stayed there who cries a lot. I said that I was a very bad daughter.
I need to apologize and say that I'm doing well. Dad laughed really hard, but Mom got upset.
Continuation. I thought it was such a rarity. I even once left my story here in the comments. But apparently, it can be inherited. My son will turn 4 in July. Since he was about 3, he's been saying that when my older daughter Sonia was little, his sister, he was big and strong, and he used to hold her in his arms. My son was born in 2016, and in 2013 my father died during surgery. By the way, I named my son after him, Alexei. I asked him, where did you live? In the city of Bryansk. And what was your name, Alexei? Even though at home we call him Alyosha. I show him a self-propelled gun called Gvozdika. My father was actually an artilleryman, a lieutenant colonel. I ask him, what is this? He answers, Gvozdika. I say, how is this a Gvozdika? Gvozdika is a flower. But he says, no, Gvozdika is a kind of tank. I was stunned. I start checking further, but he doesn't react.
I show him photos of my father. He doesn't know who it is. Today he said that when he used to be big, I was small. He worked. He had kids. That's the story.
I always remembered my birth and infancy. When I was 13, I was struck by lightning during a thunderstorm, and I started to remember things that might seem unbelievable. The memories are fragmented, but quite detailed.
I remembered my previous 4 lives. Now I am living my 5th.
It would be more accurate to say that I remember the end of each life and the reasons that led to it. There are also brief memories between my 4th and 5th lives. I remember very clearly how I kept repeating to myself, so I wouldn't forget. Only the good.
My son was about 5 or 6 years old. Once, in his sleep, he suddenly started speaking in a language we didn't know. It lasted for about 3 minutes, and his speech was clearly meaningful.
We were playing on the carpet with my nephew. He's about 4 or 5 years old. He asks, "Where is your little son?" I answer that I don't have a son, only 2 daughters. He knows that. He says, yes, but there was also a boy, a very little one.
He sees, but he can't understand where he went. I was stunned. Before my youngest daughter, I had a premature birth at 5 months. It was a boy.
When I was 4 years old, I kept asking my mom a question, wanting confirmation of something I felt inside. Would I be different if I was born in another body to different parents? My mom would answer, of course I would be completely different. And I told her she was wrong. I would be the same, eternal and unchanging. Then, much later, when I was a teenager, I had a dream. It was very special. It was more like a memory. And it felt eerily familiar. So much that it hurt. It made me tremble inside. I was the pilot of a spaceship. I was delivering cargo from one planet to another, using an ultra-powerful travel system that was much faster than the speed of light. I really liked that job. It gave me the chance to be alone with myself, to explore space, to admire unseen galaxies and star clusters. The ship was single pilot, fully equipped to make it easy and simple to operate. Then I remembered leaving the huge green inhabited planet. Everything was fine at first. But then, during the jump into space, the travel system catastrophically failed, and I was thrown out of the universe. I stood in front of a huge observation window and saw the vast cosmos from the outside.
It was very large, made up of many glowing threads that did not intersect with each other. They looked like the petals of a fantastic flower. Then I died.
My last words were, "How wonderful. It was good to get lost here, just to see the rose of the world."
All this happened back in the Soviet Union, and I hadn't seen any science fiction movies on this topic, nor had I read any books with anything like it.
If I believe that this was a memory, then it becomes clear why I loved books about space from a very early age, and why I always liked being alone.
I knew from childhood that we don't live just one life. But growing up in the USSR, I thought my guesses were silly.
By the time people started talking about it openly, I already had 3 children. None of them ever talked about past lives.
But knowing that children do remember, I asked my youngest. He was already 9 years old. You know that we don't live just one life, right? And so, in your opinion, why don't we remember the previous ones? The answer was brilliant. Of course, Mom, more than one. But if our memories weren't erased, we'd break down from all that information. After all, even a computer gets cleaned of unnecessary files.
I had the same dream until I was 5 and I was afraid of it. I was killed on stage while I was dancing, and I told my mother how I was born. And she told me, "Be quiet, or my hair will start to stand on end, and I can pick up any dance on the fly."
My grandson is 14 years old now. When he was 3, we were lying on the bed, and I was putting him to sleep.
Already half asleep, he told me, "Grandma, I burned in a tank. Then I got out and fell face first into a river. That's how I died. But I was a good tank crewman." And then he fell asleep. His mom, my daughter, was away in the regional center for her studies.
I called her and told her everything. She just laughed. But a week later, she asked me to bring my grandson to her, since her studies were over, and she wanted to spend the day with him in the park. When she was giving him a ride on the children's carousel, quite high above the ground. When it stopped, he grabbed the railing and boldly jumped down to the ground. The female attendant got really scared, but he told her, "Don't worry, I used to be in the military." But the most interesting story happened when they went across the bridge over the railway, which had been built just 2 years ago. His words were, "There used to be no bridge here, only the one near the train station." And after crossing the bridge, he rushed along the sidewalk next to a low barrack-like building saying, "Mom, the library is still here." When her daughter approached this building, there was a sign, "City Library." For a month he kept saying that he was a soldier, and then he stopped mentioning it. Now when I ask him, he says, "I'm joking."
It happened in Petropavlovsk in northern Kazakhstan.
My dad told me that when I was 3 years old, I told a story about how I crashed in a helicopter in the winter taiga. Everyone died except me. Wounded, I walked through the taiga for a very long time. Then I sat down under a tree, fell asleep, and never woke up again. That's how it was. I tried to find some disaster that matched the time, but there are so many of them.
My baby slept almost all the time during the first month of his life.
It was hard to wake him up to feed him. I often went into the room and watched him sleep. Looking at his face, you could think he was watching something on fast forward.
All kinds of emotions appeared on his face. He smiled, cried, and frowned. One emotion quickly replaced another. One time, I even got scared when I heard him laugh in an adult man's voice.
All of this lasted exactly 1 month. As soon as he turned 1 month old, everything stopped the next day. His sleep became calmer and less prolonged. He started interacting with the world around him more. And when he was 3 years old, he once said that he used to live in a forest where there was no winter and there were monkeys, and that he was roasted over a fire and eaten. "But you, Mom, don't worry," he said. "It didn't hurt anymore."
I have a scar on my chest. When I was about 2 or 3 years old, my parents jokingly asked me where it came from, and I answered that I had been shot. That's why it's there, and I got really nervous about it. I also clearly remember my early childhood, where we lived with my parents when I was born, how I crawled on all fours, and how my mother breastfed me. When I grew up, I talked to my mom about it. She was shocked. She said that I was 8 months old at the time. I started telling these stories a little later. P.S. I have never commented on anything on YouTube in my life. But this time, I couldn't resist. Very nice episode. Thank you.
Now, after watching all of this, each of you can draw your own personal conclusion.
Some people will change their attitude towards reincarnation. Some will suddenly remember something from their own life that they seem to have stopped paying attention to and long forgotten.
Some people will pay closer attention to their children when they start saying things that aren't childish at all. Some will call their parents after watching this.
And some will just consider all this to be false memories, mass hysteria, or simply a made-up story written out of boredom in the comments under our episodes by bored YouTube viewers. Show your appreciation for this video with a like, and head to the comments under this and previous episodes on the topic for some reading. After all, some of these personal revelations might be even more interesting to you than the video itself. And as one of you wrote, don't be afraid to die. Be afraid to live an empty, unmindful life. See you on Kramola in this and in future incarnations.